In a rare moment, time seems to stop. The routine continues out there, noisy and hurried, but inside us something whispers and asks for silence. It is in these moments that something profound is revealed, like an echo that does not belong to this world. Today, this echo is not the result of simple introspection, but of a message that has crossed the invisible to reach us. And it is not just any message. It is a call, a warning so intense that it makes us realize how far we are from our true essence. Firstly, I would like to invite you to subscribe to this channel because here I will be sharing a prophetic message for your heart every day. And don't forget to comment below your prayer request and tell me who you have been praying for in the last few days, your family, friends, for work, for healing. Make your prayer request below and accompanied by your prayer request. Also tell me what country you are from, so I know which countries our message is reaching. Amen. Why do we feel that knot in our chest when we hear about divine warnings? Because deep down we know that something is not right. There is a spiritual fatigue that we pretend not to feel, masked by the daily hustle and bustle. But the truth is that each of us has a silent commitment to something bigger, a commitment we often put aside out of comfort or fear of looking inward. When the names of Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini are mentioned, we are not talking about unknown personalities or isolated events. We are talking about voices that received a greater mission, to transmit a warning directly from heaven. And when heaven speaks, there is no room for trivial doubts or for human pride that insists on rationalizing everything. The call is made with a clarity that penetrates to the most hidden corners of our soul. It is as if life lost sight of us in the face of infinity. But what does this mean? What we hear and read about meanings can remain indifferent when the divine does not stop for all humanity, but mainly for those willing to listen. How many times do we prefer not to listen for fear of what we might discover? As if we didn't know that silence in the face of the call can cost us much more than we imagine. The warning is not a distant prophecy destined to be fulfilled in the distant future. It is a mirror that reflects today, now. And when we look at that reflection, we realize that we are distracted by so many small urgencies that take us away from what really matters. Are we ready for the extraordinary, or do we choose to stay trapped in the ordinary while something great happens before our eyes? The messages received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini do not bring easy promises or comfortable forecasts. They are an invitation and a warning to wake up before time slips through our fingers. But if we stop for a moment and really listen, we will realize that behind every word is a love as great as the warning is stern. Because only those who truly love are capable of warning with such vehemence. The divine call resounds but does not shout. He speaks just enough to be heard by those who have a heart willing to listen. And when we listen, something changes. It is as if a new perception arises within us, lifting the veil that kept us asleep. The world out there is noisy, but the call does not belong to the world, belongs to the invisible, eternal. And we who listen, ignore once again or finally heed, carry the finger of mercy, a reminder that despite all human failings, there is still a chance. We can still transform our history, but for that we need to act. We need to wake up. It is not enough to simply know that the message exists. It is necessary to open the door of the heart and let it take root, changing not only what we do, but who we are. The question before us is simple and at the same time challenging. Until when are we going to postpone the encounter with what really matters? When the silence is broken by a divine call, it is never the same, and we should not be the same either. When heaven decides to break the silence and manifest itself, it is not just any event. This is not a phenomenon that we can interpret casually or with the coldness of skepticism. It is a rare and extraordinary moment where eternity touches the present and the invisible becomes visible, to remind us of a truth that we often prefer to forget. Life is not limited to what we can see and control. The manifestations of the Virgin Mary do not arise at random. When she appears, it is not to arouse curiosity or create sensationalism. His presence is an act of love, but also a serious warning. It manifests itself when the deviations become so serious that the heart of humanity begins to move dangerously far from its divine origin. History shows us that, in crucial moments, when man loses his direction, heaven intervenes with clear signs. But are we willing to see them? The look of the Virgin Mary is the look of a mother, and every mother sees the end of a fatal mistake. He cannot close his heart. He can't bear to see the fall without extending his hands. It's not just for stopping, it is also firm. Because loving is not just about protecting, it is about correcting when necessary. His love is so great that he prefers to see us uncomfortable with the truth rather than let us sink into error. The messages received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini carry this divine duality. They are both a hug and a warning. There are times when heavenly silence weighs upon us as a reminder that we have free will and the responsibility to use our freedom wisely. But there is also a rare moment when time seems to stop. The routine continues out there, noisy and full of hurry, but inside us something whispers and asks for silence. It is in these moments that something profound is revealed, like an echo that does not belong to this world. Today, that echo is not the result of simple introspection, but of a message that has crossed the invisible to reach us. And it is not just any message, it is a call, a warning so intense that it makes us realize how far we are from our true essence. Why do we feel that knot in our chest when we hear about divine warnings? Because deep down, we know something is not right. There is a spiritual fatigue that we pretend not to feel, masked by the daily hustle and bustle. But the truth is that each of us has a silent commitment to something bigger, a commitment we often put aside out of comfort or fear of looking inward. When the names of Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini are mentioned, we are not talking about unknown personalities or isolated events. We are talking about voices that received a greater mission, to transmit a warning directly from heaven. And when heaven speaks, there is no room for trivial doubts or for human pride that insists on rationalizing everything. The call is made with a clarity that penetrates to the most hidden corners of our soul. It is as if life lost sight of us in the face of infinity. But what does this mean? What we hear and read about meanings can remain indifferent when the divine does not stop for all humanity, but primarily for those willing to listen. How many times do we prefer not to listen for fear of what we might discover? As if we didn't know that silence in the face of the call can cost us much more than we imagine. The warning is not a distant prophecy destined to be fulfilled in the distant future. It is a mirror that reflects today now. And when we look at that reflection, we realize that we are distracted by so many small urgencies that take us away from what really matters. Are we ready for the extraordinary, or do we choose to stay trapped in the ordinary while something great happens before our eyes? The messages received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini do not bring easy promises or comfortable forecasts. They are an invitation and a warning to wake up before time slips through our fingers. But if we stop for a moment and really listen, we will realize that behind every word is a love as great as the warning is stern. Because only those who truly love are capable of warning with such vehemence. The divine call resounds but does not shout. He speaks just enough to be heard by those who have a heart willing to listen. And when we listen, something changes. It is as if a new perception arises within us, lifting the veil that kept us asleep. The world out there is noisy, but the call does not belong to the world, belongs to the invisible, eternal. And we who listen, ignore once again or finally heed, carry the finger of mercy, a reminder that despite all human failings, there is still a chance. We can still transform our history, but for that, we need to act. We need to wake up. It is not enough to simply know that the message exists. It is necessary to open the door of the heart and let it take root, changing not only what we do, but who we are. The question before us is simple and at the same time challenging. Until when are we going to postpone the encounter with what really matters? When the silence is broken by a divine call, it is never the same, and we should not be the same either. When heaven decides to break the silence and manifest itself, it is not just any event. This is not a phenomenon that we can interpret casually or with the coldness of skepticism. It is a rare and extraordinary moment where eternity touches the present and the invisible becomes visible, to remind us of a truth that we often prefer to forget. Life is not limited to what we can see and control. The manifestations of the Virgin Mary do not arise at random. When she appears, it is not to arouse curiosity or create sensationalism. His presence is an act of love, but also a serious warning. It manifests itself when the deviations become so serious that the heart of humanity begins to move dangerously far from its divine origin. History shows us that, in crucial moments, when man loses his direction, heaven intervenes with clear signs. But are we willing to see them? The look of the Virgin Mary is the look of a mother, and every mother sees the end of a fatal mistake. He cannot close his heart. He can't bear to see the fall without extending his hands. It's not just for stopping, it is also firm. Because loving is not just about protecting, it is about correcting when necessary. His love is so great that he prefers to see us uncomfortable with the truth rather than let us sink into error. The messages received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini carry this divine duality. They are both a hug and a warning. There are times when heavenly silence weighs upon us as a reminder that we have free will and the responsibility to use our freedom wisely. But there are also moments when that silence is filled with urgency, as if heaven were saying, "You are getting lost, and I cannot allow you to continue walking on this path." That's why, in the end, warnings are not just empty words. They carry a purpose. They are a direct call to wake up. It is an invitation, but also a warning that the time of indifference is coming to an end. This is not empty religious discourse or mystical words disconnected from reality. It is a direct and real call, made with the language of truth and love. How many times in our hurried routine do we ignore what really matters? How many times do we let what is essential go unnoticed, worried about passing problems that will have no relevance tomorrow? It is exactly this constant movement of distractions that makes us deaf to the most important warnings. And that is why divine intervention does not come as a spectacle to entertain, but as a sign that interrupts our constant flight. The warning is a reminder that the time we think we have is not infinite. There are limits, and when the Virgin Mary speaks, she reminds us that our earthly existence is just a prelude to something much greater. We cannot continue to live as if we have absolute control over everything when, in reality, we depend on something infinitely higher. But there is something powerful in this message. It is not just a notice of justice, it is also proof that we are not abandoned. Heaven does not speak to condemn us, but to save us. If God didn't care, there would be no messages, signs, or manifestations. Divine silence would be absolute, but it is not. The presence of the Virgin among us is proof that despite our failures, we continue to be deeply loved. When the sky speaks, everything changes. But for that change to occur in us, we need to make a choice. We can continue to live as if this warning is not for us, or we can open our hearts and allow each word to become a guide in the midst of chaos. It's not about fear, but about respect for life and what it represents. The divine voice does not seek to scare us, but to reorient us. It is a gesture of mercy, an invitation to deep reflection and transformation. There are no guarantees of a tomorrow when it comes to spiritual choices. Therefore, the warning received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini pressures us to act now, before time catches up with us with irreversible consequences. So, in the face of this message, we cannot remain neutral. The mother speaks, and the heart must decide. Do we remain trapped in distractions, or do we take a step toward the truth that sets us free? When a warning comes from above, it does not carry the lightness of a simple piece of advice. It is like a trumpet that wakes up those who are sleeping, that draws the attention of those who walk distractedly on the edge of a precipice. The warning received by Luz de Maria and Miriam Corsini is neither a vague prediction nor a purposeless mystical omen. It is a cry from the heart of the Heavenly Mother to awaken from apathy, not with words of despair, but with the strength of someone who loves deeply and does not accept losing those who can still be saved. Why do we feel so much resistance when hearing warning messages? Because they confront us with something we prefer to avoid: the need to change. No one likes to admit that they are following a path that leads to destruction. It is easier to believe that time is on our side and that we will have countless opportunities to correct our mistakes. But what heaven tells us is that the time of grace has a limit. And when that limit approaches, God, in His infinite mercy, sends warnings, not to condemn us, but to alert us. The urgency of this warning is not only in the content of the words received, but in the weight of the spiritual realities it carries with it. They are not symbolic stories or reflections to fuel religious debates. They are truths that reflect our own situation. Distracted by the vanities of the world, we seek fleeting pleasures, while the eternal dissolves before our eyes. Every day we ignore the signs is a day lost on our spiritual walk. The message of the Virgin Mary does not come to scare us, but to remind us of the difference between destruction and salvation. It is in our hands to decide, do we continue to ignore what really matters, or do we decide to wake up and act? We often wonder why heaven allows so much suffering. But the real question is, why have we come this far without listening to the numerous warnings that God has given us? The trail of love and justice that these warnings leave is a reminder that we are not alone, even in the most difficult times. The help of the Virgin Mary is real, but not as a magical promise of immediate liberation. She offers us strength to resist, grace to persevere, and courage to get up as many times as necessary. She reminds us that we are loved children, but also responsible, and it is that responsibility that sets us free. If we listen sincerely, we will see that the warning is not a burden, but a blessing. It doesn't take away our peace, it gives us back our sense of purpose. It does not condemn us, it awakens us to choose a higher path. The call is to justice, yes, but a justice accompanied by a love that does not give up on us. It is proof that God does not abandon us, even when we ourselves have walked away. He seeks us, calls us, and offers us a new opportunity. The warning challenges us to reflect. Are we ready to accept both love and justice? Are we willing to change before it is too late? Heaven does not force us, but it invites us to choose. The decision is ours, and it must be made now. Because every moment we remain deaf to the call is one step closer to the abyss, and every moment we choose to listen is a new opportunity to be restored and led to true peace. Every time we hear a divine call, we are faced with the profound question, are we going to continue ignoring the message, or are we going to accept the change necessary to transform ourselves? This is not a simple warning, but an invitation to live with renewed purpose, to embrace life in its fullest and truest form. The divine warning is not a punishment, but an opportunity for liberation. Each word of this message has profound weight because each of us, throughout our lives, faces decisions that not only affect our future, but the spiritual destiny of our soul. It's a reminder that if we continue to live as if we have all the time in the world, we can lose the most important thing, our connection to the divine. When listening to the call of the Virgin Mary, we cannot remain indifferent. She comes not only to warn us about what is to come, but to show us the path to salvation. It offers us a unique opportunity to change our lives, but we must be willing to take the necessary step. Divine mercy is available to all, but we cannot wait forever. It's now or never. Each of us has the ability to transform our lives, but to achieve this, we need to open our hearts and recognize our weaknesses. It's not about being perfect, but about being sincere in our desire to improve. As we advance in our spiritual life, we learn that it is not about running away from problems, but about facing them with courage and faith. True spiritual preparation is not an escape from the world, but a conscious integration with the divine will. The Virgin Mary, with her mother's gaze, invites us to take concrete action, to no longer ignore the signs that surround us. The world is full of distractions, but they should not take us away from what really matters. The divine call does not seek to alarm us, but to awaken us to the reality that we have a purpose and a mission in this world. The sooner we respond, the closer we will be to finding the peace we so seek. It is easy to let the noise of the world drown us, for daily worries to divert us from our true mission. But every time we decide to listen to the divine voice, we open the door of our hearts to a radical transformation. Spiritual preparation is not about superficial effort, but about a deep commitment to truth, faith, and love. It is a constant work of internal growth, a journey towards authenticity and connection with the divine. The Virgin Mary's warning is not a threat, it is a gift. It offers us the opportunity to look at our lives with new eyes, to change what is not working, and to begin living with renewed purpose. It is not about escaping difficulties, but about facing them with courage, with faith that God will guide us every step of the way. Every time we face a difficulty, we realize how fragile we are, but also the strength found in our faith. God does not leave us alone in our struggles, and the Virgin Mary, as a loving mother, is always ready to intercede for us. It calls us to be brave, to not let fear or insecurity stop us on our path to transformation. This is the moment, the time to respond to the divine call. There is no room for more excuses to continue postponing change. Life is a gift, but time is limited. Every day that we ignore the divine call is a day lost in our spiritual life. Therefore, we must act promptly, respond sincerely, and open our hearts to the will of God. The Virgin Mary's warning is clear and invites us to reflect deeply on our lives. Are we living according to our deepest values? Are we fulfilling our divine mission in this world? If not, what are we waiting to change? The choice is in our hands, and the time to act is now. Every prayer, every gesture of faith, every step towards change brings us closer to the transformation we need. This is not an external transformation, but an internal change that will allow us to live more fully and authentically. The Virgin Mary's warning is not only a call to action, but a reminder that there is always time to change, but that time is not infinite. As we hear this call, we should not fear what is to come, but embrace it with confidence. Divine mercy is here to guide us, to help us find the path to peace and salvation. But to receive that mercy, we must be willing to change, open our hearts, and make decisions that reflect God's love and truth. The Virgin Mary does not ask us to be perfect, only to be authentic in our search for truth and love. She doesn't expect us to do everything on our own, but rather to trust that God is with us every step of the way. True faith is not blind faith, but a deep trust in divine wisdom and the ability to transform our lives through love and mercy. Thus, this message invites us to reflect on our lives, to examine our priorities, and to make the necessary changes to live a life more connected to the divine. It's not about being perfect, but about being faithful to what we know is right. And in doing so, we come closer to the peace we seek and the salvation that God offers us with His infinite mercy. This is the time to act, the time to awaken, the time to respond to the divine call. The Virgin Mary offers us her love and guidance and calls us to live with purpose, faith, and gratitude. No more distractions, no more excuses. The time to change is now, and every step we take will bring us closer to what God has prepared for us. When we hear a warning of this magnitude, we feel that something deep is touching us, something that resonates in the depths of our being. We face the truth, the reality that time is not on our side, and that the decisions we make today will define our spiritual destiny. Life is not an aimless path, but a series of choices that lead us to a destination determined by our actions and our relationship with the divine. The Virgin Mary, in her infinite compassion, extends her hand to us and invites us to walk with her on this path of conversion and redemption. It calls us to look inside ourselves, to stop along the way and ask ourselves if we are really living in accordance with the values we proclaim. The world constantly distracts us with empty promises and temporary pleasures. But true peace is only found when we choose to follow God's path, when we make the conscious decision to live with purpose, love, and faith. This divine calling is not something we can ignore without consequences. Every warning we receive from heaven is an opportunity to transform our lives, but it is also an urgent call to action. We can't wait for circumstances to align perfectly or for the right moment to arrive. The right time is now, and the decisions we make today will have an eternal impact on our spiritual life. It is normal to feel resistance when we are invited to change, because changing means leaving behind what we know, what is familiar, even if that is taking us down the wrong path. However, true transformation is only achieved when we decide to free ourselves from the chains that bind us to the mundane and accept the divine call that leads us towards a fuller, more authentic life, more aligned with the will of God. Every time we take a step towards transformation, every time we choose to live with integrity, with humility, and with love, we get closer to the peace that only God can offer us. Divine warning is not something to be feared, but something to be received with gratitude and willingness to change. It reminds us that we are not alone, that there is always time to get back on the right path, but that time is not infinite. It's easy to get carried away by the distractions of the world. We live in an era full of noise, distractions, and constant information that prevents us from focusing on what really matters. However, the call of the Virgin Mary invites us to pause, to reflect on our lives, on our priorities, on the purpose we have in this world. Are we really fulfilling the purpose for which we were created? As we reflect on this, we realize that we have been pursuing things that in the end have no eternal value. Material wealth, fame, power, all those things are ephemeral and fleeting. The only thing that remains is our relationship with God, our commitment to truth and love. If we want to find true peace, we need to focus on what really matters, our faith, our connection to the divine, and our purpose in this world. Every decision we make has an impact on our spiritual life. Every thought, every word, every action counts. Therefore, when the Virgin Mary calls us, she is inviting us to live in a more conscious, more deliberate way, more aligned with the divine will. It is not just about making prayers or ritual gestures, but about living authentically, about being consistent with our faith and our values in all aspects of our lives. When we make the decision to respond to the divine call, We are not taking an easy path. Living with faith, living with purpose, living according to God's will is not always easy. Sometimes it involves sacrifices, renunciations, and facing our own weaknesses and fears. But it is precisely in those moments when divine grace strengthens us, when God gives us the strength to move forward, even when it seems that everything is against us. The warning we receive from heaven calls us to live with a greater awareness of our spiritual responsibility. It reminds us that our decisions are not just about ourselves, but have an impact on the world around us. If we choose to live according to divine principles, we can be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for others. If we choose to ignore the divine call, we risk getting lost, getting caught up in the distractions of the world without finding the true purpose of our life. We cannot continue to wait for things to change on their own. The world is not going to get better on its own, but we can do our part by choosing to live with faith, hope, and love. Every action we take, every prayer we pray, every sacrifice we offer has an impact on our spiritual future and the future of the world. The Virgin Mary calls us to be an active part in the change that we need to see in the world, not to remain passive, but to act with determination and faith. This is the time to wake up, to listen to the divine call, and make the decisions that will bring us closer to God. We cannot continue living as if time were infinite, as if we had our entire lives to change. Time is a precious gift, and each passing moment brings us closer to the fulfillment of our eternal destiny. We must act now, while we have the opportunity, to ensure that our decisions today will lead us on the path to salvation. Divine mercy is available to all, but we must be willing to open our hearts and make the necessary changes. It is not about seeking perfection, but about living with sincerity and humility, recognizing our weaknesses and always seeking to improve. The Virgin Mary is here to help us in this process, to guide us towards the path of truth, peace, and salvation. We may feel fear, uncertainty, or doubt, but true peace is only found when we choose to live with faith and hope in what God has in store for us. No matter how difficult times are, there is always hope for those who choose to follow the divine path. The Virgin Mary's warning reminds us that we are not alone, that we can always return to the right path if we are willing to repent, change, and live with renewed purpose. True freedom is found in living in accordance with divine will. We are not prisoners of our circumstances, but we have the power to choose our path. And the path to peace and salvation begins with a decision. The decision to listen to the divine call, to live with faith and love, and to follow the path that God has prepared for us. This is the time to wake up, to change, to choose to live with purpose. The warning is here, but it is not a punishment. It is an opportunity to transform our lives and live according to what really matters. We can't wait any longer. The time is now. The divine call is not something we can let pass. If we truly understand the magnitude of what is at stake, we cannot continue to live indifferently. Divine warnings invite us to wake up from the darkness and see reality as it is, without masks or excuses. If we continue to ignore the call, we are choosing to remain in a state of spiritual disconnection that will eventually lead us down the path of perdition. We can no longer run away from what we know to be true. Every time we avoid facing the reality of our spiritual life, we move further away from what really matters. The Virgin Mary, like a loving mother, calls us urgently so that we no longer ignore what we need to change. The warning is not a punishment, but an invitation to a better life, a life more connected to God, more aligned with His will. Today, more than ever, the world needs us. It needs us to respond to the divine call and live with purpose. We cannot continue to be distracted by the trivialities around us. There is a mission to fulfill, a purpose that we can only find if we make conscious decisions, if we act with integrity and faith. Life is not a series of random events, but a process where our actions have a profound impact on our eternal destiny. Each of us has the ability to make a difference. Spiritual transformation is not something that happens magically, requires action. It requires us to stop, reflect on our lives, and make conscious decisions that bring us closer to the truth and love of God. We can't keep leaving things for tomorrow. The opportunity to change is now. Today is the day to open our hearts, to listen to the call, and to start living with purpose. It's not about waiting for circumstances to change. The world will not change by itself. It is we who must change. Every action, every word, every thought has the power to influence our lives and the lives of others. If we choose to live according to divine principles, we can be a light in the darkness. We can be a source of hope for those who find themselves lost in this world full of distractions and confusion. This is the time to wake up. We cannot continue living as if we have all the time in the world. Time is limited, and every decision we make today has an impact on our spiritual future. If we choose to live consciously, if we choose to follow God's path, we can experience a peace that transcends circumstances, a peace that is only found when we live in harmony with the divine. The Virgin Mary, with her unconditional love, calls us to make the decision to change. She doesn't expect us to be perfect, but rather to be sincere in our desire to improve. We all have flaws, but the key is to recognize our weaknesses and make the effort to overcome them. God does not expect perfection from us, but rather that we be willing to walk towards holiness with humility and faith. It is not about being perfect, but about being faithful, about being authentic, about living with love and responsibility. Divine warnings are not given to scare us, but to wake us up. They are not threats, but opportunities for change. They are wake-up calls that invite us to see the truth, to recognize that our life is not an accident, but part of a much larger divine plan. We are here for a reason, and that reason is to live in communion with God and with others, contribute to the good of humanity, and fulfill our mission in this world. It is essential to understand that life is not just about what we do for ourselves, but what we do for others. When we live authentically, when we choose to love and serve, we come closer to the divine essence that dwells in each of us. We cannot stay only with the superficial. The true richness of life is in the relationships we cultivate, the love we share, and the peace we find in our connection with God. The time of indifference is coming to an end. The Virgin Mary is calling us to wake up, to be aware of what really matters. We cannot continue to ignore the signs that are in front of us. The divine call is clear, and the urgency is real. Each time we respond to the call with sincerity, we take another step towards the transformation and towards the peace that only God can give us. But if we choose to ignore it, we move away from our purpose and plunge into the darkness of the world. Today is the day to wake up, to change, to live with purpose. The opportunity to change is here, and we cannot continue to postpone it. Every day we spend without hearing the divine call is a day wasted. Time is a gift that we cannot take for granted. Life is fragile, and we don't know how much time we have left. Therefore, we must act now. Today is the day to make the decision to live authentically, to follow God's path, and to make a difference in the world. Heaven does not leave us alone. The Virgin Mary is here to guide us, to help us find the path to peace and salvation. But we must be willing to open our hearts and make the effort to live according to His will. It is not about living perfectly, but about living sincerely with faith and with love. Every step we take will bring us closer to the peace we seek, to the transformation we need. This is an urgent call, a call to change, to conversion, to live with purpose and love. The time to do it is now. We don't know what the future holds, but we do know that we have the ability to transform our lives today, here and now. The Virgin Mary offers us her support, her love, and her mercy, but it is up to us to take that step, to make that choice. Every prayer, every gesture of love, every step towards faith will bring us closer to the divine purpose we have in this world. Change is possible, the transformation is real, and the peace we seek is within our reach. We just need to take the step of faith, open our hearts, and listen to the divine call with all our soul. This is the moment. There is no more time to hesitate. The opportunity to change is here, and we must take advantage of it. Life is waiting, and so are we. Every moment we spend without responding to the divine call is a lost moment. Time runs its course, and we don't know how much we have left to change. Life is fleeting, but the decisions we make today have an eternal impact. This is the time to make a conscious decision, to leave distractions behind and return to the divine path that will lead us to peace, hope, and true spiritual transformation. The Virgin Mary does not call us to scare us, but to wake us up. Every warning we receive from the divine is a reminder that we are here for a purpose. We are not in this world by chance. Each of us has a mission, a purpose to fulfill, and that purpose is directly related to our connection with God and with others. Living according to divine values not only benefits ourselves, but also has a positive impact on the world around us. Through our actions, words, and thoughts, we can be a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope for those who feel lost. The divine call is an act of love. It is heaven touching our lives so that we can awaken to the truth, to the divine purpose that has been assigned to us. But for this to happen, we must be willing to make the necessary effort. This is not a superficial change, but a profound transformation that begins in the depths of our being. Every day, we have the opportunity to choose to live differently, to choose to follow the path that God has prepared for us. True peace is only found when we live in harmony with divine will. It is essential to understand that spiritual transformation is not an instantaneous or easy process. It requires effort, dedication, and above all, a sincere commitment to God and ourselves. Many times we face our own weaknesses and temptations, but the important thing is not to give up, but to move forward, knowing that with God's grace we can overcome any obstacle. The Virgin Mary invites us to have faith in this process, to trust that, although the path is difficult, we are not alone. God is with us every step of the way, and is always ready to give us the strength to move forward. This is the time to wake up. The world is full of noise and distractions, but we must learn to listen to God's voice above all. Every time we respond to the divine call, we are choosing to live for a purpose greater than ourselves. The call of the Virgin Mary reminds us that our lives are not just about our own interests, but about how we can serve others, about how we can be instruments of peace, love, and hope in this world. Every action, every thought, every word has an impact on the lives of others, and it is our responsibility to make sure that impact is positive and uplifting. Life is short, but God's love is eternal. We cannot continue wasting time on things that have no eternal value. The world offers us temporary pleasures, but those pleasures do not fill the spiritual void that we all carry within. Only God can fill that void, and He does so through His love, His mercy, and His invitation to live in harmony with Him. Peace is not found in material things, in personal success, or in appearances. True peace is only found in a genuine relationship with God, a relationship that transforms our being and leads us to live in accordance with His will. The Virgin Mary offers us a unique opportunity for transformation. It invites us to leave behind everything that prevents us from living fully, to free ourselves from the chains that bind us to the world, and to walk in the light of divine truth. This invitation is not just for a small group of people. It is for all who are willing to listen, open their hearts, and make the effort to live in accordance with divine principles. God's mercy is available to everyone, but we must be willing to receive it. We cannot wait for circumstances to change on their own. We must be the agents of change. Every prayer we pray, every step we take towards spiritual transformation brings us closer to the peace we seek. There is no small step on the path to holiness. Every decision we make, every moment of reflection, every sacrifice has a profound impact on our spiritual life. We cannot live passively, waiting for things to change on their own. We must make the decision to live with faith and purpose, knowing that every action has a divine purpose. The divine warning is clear. Time does not wait. The call of the Virgin Mary is urgent because the time we have to change is limited. We cannot continue living as if the future is guaranteed. Life is uncertain, and the decisions we make today are the ones that will determine our eternal destiny. Therefore, every moment is important. Every moment is an opportunity to grow closer to God, to respond to the divine call, and to live according to His will. We cannot continue postponing change. The time to act is now. By answering the call of the Virgin Mary, we are choosing to live differently, choosing to live with purpose and faith. We are aligning ourselves with divine will and opening ourselves to spiritual transformation. Change is not always easy, but it is necessary. Living according to divine principles does not mean that life will be without difficulties, but rather that we will have the strength to face them with faith and hope. Spiritual transformation takes time and effort, but each step forward brings us closer to divine peace. It is not about being perfect, but about being sincere in our search for truth and holiness. Perfection is not the goal. Authenticity is what matters. God does not call us to be perfect, but to be faithful, to be honest with ourselves and with Him. True change begins in the heart, and from there it extends to our actions, words, and thoughts. Every day is a new opportunity to get closer to divine will and live in accordance with the spiritual values that have been revealed to us. This is the time to make the decision to change, to live with faith, hope, and love. We cannot continue living as if we have no responsibility in the world. Each of us has a divine purpose, and that purpose is found in our connection with God and with others. By living in accordance with divine will, we can transform our lives and the world around us. The Virgin Mary invites us to live with a clear purpose, to follow the path of faith, and to make our lives a testimony of love and hope for the world. Every moment of our life is an opportunity to make a decision. We cannot continue postponing change. Life is too short to let it pass without living according to what really matters. We are here for a reason, and that reason is to live by divine principles, love others, and seek the peace that is only found in a deep relationship with God. It is not about what the world expects of us, but what God expects from each of us. The call of the Virgin Mary is clear. We must wake up, take action, and live with purpose. The path to spiritual transformation is not easy, but it is the only path that will lead us to true peace. Life is full of distractions, temptations, and challenges, but what catches our attention is not what the world offers us, but what God has prepared for us. When we decide to follow the divine path, we are not walking a simple path, but we are walking the only path that has eternal meaning. Through the difficult times, through the internal struggles, God guides us, strengthens us, and gives us the strength to move forward. The key to spiritual transformation is opening the heart. It is necessary to open ourselves to God and allow His love to transform us. If we live in a closed way, if we continue choosing the path of indifference, we lose ourselves in a superficial and empty world. But when we choose to live with faith, hope, and love, we experience a deep peace that fills us completely. It is a peace that does not depend on circumstances, but on our connection with the divine. When the Virgin Mary calls us, it is not so that we continue living as we have done. It is a call to live with purpose, to awaken from spiritual apathy, and to be aware of our mission in this world. If we live in accordance with the divine, we can be a positive force in the world, an example of love and faith for others. It is not about what we accumulate or achieve in life, but about how we live and how we love others. When we love with the heart of God, we touch the lives of those around us. Spiritual transformation begins with a decision. The decision to leave the ego behind, to let go of the false assurances that the world offers us, and to embrace the truth of God. It's not about perfection, but about sincerity. God does not expect us to be perfect, but rather to be authentic in our faith and our dedication to living with love. Sometimes love requires sacrifice, but it is a sacrifice that is worth it because it brings us closer to God and gives us true peace. When we look at the world around us, it's easy to feel like everything is out of control, that things are getting worse, and that there is no hope. But the call of the Virgin Mary is a reminder that we are not alone. God is with us, guiding us every step, even when we cannot see the path clearly. He calls us to be light in the darkness, to live with faith and hope, not to give up in the face of difficulties. Faith gives us the strength to face whatever comes, knowing that we are not alone in our journey. This is the time to wake up. Life is happening right now, and every decision we make has a profound impact. We can't keep waiting for the perfect moment to change. The perfect time is now. We cannot continue ignoring the divine call. We cannot continue being distracted by the little things that separate us from what is truly important. God calls us to live with integrity, to be faithful to our faith, and to seek true peace. Every prayer, every act of faith, every gesture of love brings us closer to the divine. Spiritual transformation does not happen overnight, but it is a process that begins with a conscious decision. Every step we take in the direction of God, every sacrifice we make out of love, brings us closer to the full life that He has prepared for us. There are no shortcuts on the path to holiness, but the path we choose today will determine our eternal future. That is why the decision to change must be made now. We can't keep waiting. The Virgin Mary invites us to change, to transform our lives, and to live with purpose. This is not a superficial transformation, but a deep renewal of the heart. When we decide to change, we are not only changing our lives, but also the world around us. Living with faith, living with love, is what has the power to transform everything. Every act of love is a testimony of divine grace, and every prayer is a step toward eternal peace. This is the divine call. It is not a call for tomorrow. It is not a call for a year from now. It is a call for now, to live with purpose and dedication. No matter what stage of life you are in, it is never too late to change. God calls you, offers you His mercy and His grace, and invites you to open your heart to His love. Every moment is an opportunity to draw closer to Him, to live in harmony with His will, and to be instruments of His peace in the world. We don't have control over everything that happens in life, but we do have control over our decisions. The choice to live with faith, hope, and love is ours. And when we make that decision, something incredible happens. Our lives begin to transform. Our perspective changes, and we begin to see the world with new eyes. The problems are still there. The difficulties do not disappear. But with God by our side, everything becomes possible. The divine call is a reminder that we are not alone, that divine grace is with us every step of the way. The Virgin Mary calls us to conversion, to interior transformation. No matter how long we have been living the wrong way, it is never too late to change. God's mercy is infinite and available to everyone, but we must be willing to open ourselves to it, to accept it with humility and gratitude. Living with faith and love is what leads us to a life full of purpose and peace. Now is the time to make the decision to change. No more excuses, no more procrastination. The divine call is here, and we must respond. Every step we take in faith brings us closer to what really matters, Don't live for the distractions of the world anymore. Live with purpose, live with love, live with faith, because only when we live in accordance with divine will we find true peace, the peace that only God can give us. The divine call does not stop. It is constant, persistent, and available to everyone. Every day is a new opportunity to respond, to change, and to align ourselves with the divine purpose that God has for us. It's not about waiting for circumstances to be perfect, nor about waiting to feel ready. The time to respond is now, because what is at stake is our spiritual life, our eternal future. The life we live here is only a small fraction of eternity. Everything we do today has an impact that transcends our time on earth. The decisions we make, the actions we take, and the words we say have consequences beyond what we can understand. But when we respond to the divine call, when we choose to live with purpose and faith, everything we do has a greater purpose, one that has eternal impact. And it is this impact that reminds us that we must act now while we have the chance. It's easy to get carried away by the distractions of the world. Everyday life consumes us, worries and problems invade us, and the rush of routine makes us forget what really matters. But every time we choose to listen to the divine call, we are making a conscious choice to live with purpose, to align with God's will, and to live with love. This choice not only transforms our lives, but it also has the power to transform the world around us. Spiritual transformation is neither a single event nor an immediate process. It is a continuous journey, a series of steps we take each day, a constant effort to grow closer to God and live according to His will. And this journey begins with a decision. It is the decision to open our hearts to divine grace, to let God's love transform our lives from the inside out. It is the decision to change our way of thinking, seeing the world, and relating to others. It is the decision to live with faith, hope, and love, despite the difficulties we face. Every step on this path has a purpose, and every step we take brings us closer to the divine peace that is only found when we live in harmony with God. Sometimes that path can be difficult. There will be moments of doubt, difficulty, and internal struggle. But in those moments, God is with us. The Virgin Mary, as our spiritual mother, intercedes for us, guides us, and gives us the strength to continue. We are not alone on this journey. God accompanies us, gives us the grace to face trials, and strengthens us when we feel that we cannot move forward. This is the time to make that decision. Don't wait any longer. Don't let time pass without doing something with it. Every day is a new opportunity to get closer to God, to respond to the divine call, and to live according to what He wants for you. Every prayer you pray, every step you take toward faith and love, brings you closer to the peace you seek. Spiritual transformation is not something that is achieved all at once, but each step we take in that direction is a step towards the full life that God has prepared for us. It's not about being perfect. It's not about not making mistakes. It is about being sincere in our desire to change, in our willingness to improve, and in our openness to divine grace. God does not expect us to be perfect, but rather to be authentic, to seek His will with all our hearts, and to live with love and compassion toward others. Every time we choose to live this way, we are living in accordance with divine purpose, and it has a profound impact on our lives and the world around us. The divine calling is not just for a small group of people, it is for everyone. No matter who you are or where you come from, God calls you. He invites you to open your heart to His love and His grace. This call is not only for those who consider themselves perfect or for those who have already achieved holiness. It is for everyone, for those who struggle, for those who feel lost, for those who search, and for those who have already found. We are all invited to follow the divine path, to live with faith, and to respond to the call of the Virgin Mary, who guides us towards salvation and peace. When we decide to respond to the divine call, we are not simply making a decision for our spiritual life. We are making a decision that will affect everyone around us. Living with faith, living with purpose, living with love has a profound impact on our family, our friends, our community, and the entire world. By living in accordance with divine will, we not only transform our own lives, but we also transform the world around us. This is the time to wake up. The divine call is here, and we have the opportunity to respond. We can't keep waiting. The time for indifference has passed. The time to live according to what God wants for us is now. There is no more time for procrastination. There is no more time to ignore the truth. God calls us, and we must respond with all our heart, with all our being, with all our soul. Spiritual transformation is not something that happens on its own. It requires our action. It requires that we make a conscious decision to live with purpose, to live with love, and to live with faith. It requires us to open our hearts to divine grace and let God's love transform our lives from the inside out. And when we do, we experience a peace that is only found when we live in harmony with divine will. That peace is the peace that only God can give, and it is the peace that will lead us to a full and eternal life. Every moment is an opportunity to grow closer to God, to live with purpose, and to respond to the divine call. Let's not let it pass. Let's not waste another day. This is the time to act, the time to change, the time to live with faith. Spiritual transformation begins now with each step we take in the right direction. Open your heart, respond to the call, and live according to divine love and grace. The path to peace and salvation begins today. There are no more excuses. The time is now.